It is Sunday, November the 12th, 1995. My name is Kathleen Moran. I'm conducting an interview with Mr. Abraham Schwerd in Forest Hills, New York. And the interview will be conducted in English. Kathleen Moran. My name is Kathleen Moran. I'm conducting an interview with Mr. Abraham Schwerd on Sunday, November the 12th, 1995 in Forest Hills, New York. This is tape 1 of the interview with Mr. Abraham Schwerd on November the 12th, 1995. I'd like to begin by thanking you very much for giving us this interview.
You're welcome.
Could you tell us what your name is?
Abraham Schwerd.
And would you spell it, please?
Abraham
And have you been known by any other names?
Yes, I don't know whether I should say unfortunately. When I lived as Gentile, my name was Edek in Polish, or Edward. So my nickname became, I'm being called all over, Eddie.
And when were you born?
I was born August 4th, 1930.
And where were you born, sir?
Poland.
And where in Poland?
A little town called Bukowsk.
And how do you spell that?
Bukowsko, Bukowsko.
And how old are you now, sir?
65.
I'd like to begin by talking about your family in Poland before the war. What was your father's name?
Isaac.
And where was he born?
He was born a little town next to Belz, Galicia, Poland.
And when approximately was he born?
I was here around 1908, probably, yeah.
And what is your mother's name?
Sarah.
And what was her maiden name?
Gunsberg.
And could you tell us where she was born?
She was born in Bukowska.
And when was she born?
She was born, I think, in 1907. She was a year older than my father.
Did you have sisters and brothers?
Yes, I do.
Could you tell us about them?
Well, my older sister, thank God, we are all here in the United States. My older sister, her name is Bella. My other sister is named Regina. They both live in Brooklyn. And I have two brothers. One is Leo and one is Bernie. One lives in Kew Garden Hills and one lives in Borough Park.
And are you the oldest or the youngest?
I'm the youngest.
I'd like to talk a little bit about your life in Bukowsk, about your life at home. What language did you speak at home?
Polish and Yiddish.
And would you describe your family as a religious family?
Yes. My father was a Hasidic Jew. Before the war, but during the war, he had no more, when he came to the United States, no more beard, you know. He was just a Jew. Religious, though.
And did you go to school?
Just for 1 year.
And what kind of school did you go to?
It was a Catholic school, a state school, because we couldn't afford to have a Jewish school.
What were your experiences like in that school?
Well, every time I came home, either I had my ears pinched or pulled by the payas, and of course being cursed with all kind of dirty Jew and so forth and so on.
Do you remember what you were studying in that school?
Very little. It was first grade.
Did you have best friends when you were that age?
Yes, I had my cousin, which did not survive, same age as I.
What was his name?
Gunsberg. His name was so many years that he's dead, I forgot the first name. Shmuel. It slipped my mind, I'm sorry.
What did you do together with your cousin?
Well, we went to Cheder together, you know. I went also with my brothers, the same Cheder. We played, you know, sort of, till we were very happy, let's put it this way.
Could you explain what Cheder is?
Beg your pardon?
Could you explain what a hater is?
A hater. A hater, it's not a hater, it's a cheder with a C-H. A hater is a rabbi in the little towns. In their apartment, they had a room, and it's like different type of classes. Let's presume I went to a different class because I was the youngest. My brothers went to a different class, to a different Rebbe. There were about 5, 6 cheders in our town. And this is the way how we used to learn how to read Hebrew, study the Chumash, Rashi, and Gemara, so on, so on.
And did you go to these schools after the regular state school?
Yes,
afternoon?
first we went to the state school, and then we went to the cheder.
Can you describe for us what your house was like, what your home was like?
Well, I was very fortunate. My father was a successful businessman. If you want to call, for Bukowski it was a big business. We lived in the center of town. And when I was born, my father built a 3-story building. Downstairs we had our business. Upstairs, the first floor we lived, and the second floor was already destined for my sister. If they get married, they'll live in the same house with us.
What kind of a business did your father have?
My father sold mainly grain, flour, sugar, and so on.
Let's talk a little bit about Bukowsk itself. How large a town was it?
Bukowsk had an inhabitants probably about between 600 and 650 Jews.
Was it a predominantly or mainly Jewish town?
No. I think that the entire Bukowsk had about, with the surrounding, had about 2,000
People
inhabitants.
altogether?
Yeah.
And where is Bukowsk near? What part of Poland is it in?
Bukowsk is very close to the Slovakian border, and the next town that is sort of, Bukowsk is also the town. On the map you'll find it. It's funny because on the map it says Bukowsko miasto, which means that Bukowsk is a little town. The map states it because they thought maybe it's a village. The next town is called Sanok, Sunik in Yiddish and Sanok in Polish. That was already, they had about 5,000 Jews.
How did the Jews and the non-Jews get along in Bukowsk?
Well, in the schools, the anti-Semitism was very, very great. However, and of course, they used to, matter of fact, we got, before the war broke out, one of the teachers came up with all the students, the Gentiles, and they sang a song, "When Hitler will come, we will cut your heads off." That was the teacher training the children. It was like 1st or 2nd grade. They went through the little town, and that's the songs that they used to sing.
Do you recall any talk at home, or your parents talking about the situation?
Well, no, I do not recall that.
Do you know if your father had at any time considered leaving Poland?
I don't know.
While we're still talking about your childhood, would you describe for us what your favorite holiday was and how it was celebrated?
My favorite holiday was probably Sukkot, because we had a sukkah in our home, a built-in sukkah.
Could you explain what a sukkah is?
A sukkah is a hut that when the festival of Sukkot comes, which is called Sukkot, when the Jews went out of Egypt, they had Sukkot, huts, and this is sort of like a remembrance for us. God commanded that we should have this Sukkot, and you go out and from the apartment or from the house, and you go in to this type of sukkah, and you're supposed to dwell there for 7 days.
And how did your family
We
spend
did
the
that.
7 days?
Lots of people were even sleeping in the sukkah. Here in the United States, people don't, but there are quite a few that still also sleep in sukkahs, but very, very few. But in Poland, I would say the majority of the religious Jews that tried to sleep in the sukkah, although it was so cold, it's unbelievable. So, we had probably the nicest sukkah in town because my father was well-to-do and we had the means. So that's why I liked sukkahs.
Do you remember any special foods connected with
Sukkahs? Not necessarily. Oh, yeah, also. My greatest kick was before Passover. You see, it's not like here in the States, you go and you buy a box of matzahs. Over there, the preparation started. Grow the wheat. You have to watch the growing. Take off the wheat. That any chametz, any fermentation should not come in. And then we used to grind the wheat on a little, which is called a mill, like a little hand mill. And with this flour, every Jew practically had to do this process. Buy the wheat, and then with a little hand mill, grind it. Of course, we had help that did that for us, but most of the people, I would say 90% of the town, the people, they had to do it on themselves, which is very hard to pull. That the stone on top is not so easy. And then we went to this flour to the baker. And everybody was sort of like enlisted to do this type of work. One needed the dough, and I, as a kid, I used to, with I don't know how they call it, a roller, to roll up the matzah. And then somebody was sitting with like sort of like a little wheel, and it had sharp edges, and he went through the matzahs to make the, I don't know how you would call it in English, it was called in Yiddish a matzah-redel. In other words, it perpetrated the matzahs. And then, of course, this was something that most probably I will never forget.
Did you have other family living in Bakowsk?
Yes. I had 2 uncles and 2 aunts, and they had about the same amount of children. They were the same families as we were. 3 boys and 2 girls, or 2 girls and 3 boys, all of them.
And you saw a lot of them?
Oh yeah, my aunt, we lived in the same building, because the house was a partnership building that my father built with my uncle. They lived on one side of the hall, and we lived on the other side, right vis-a-vis, and the doors were facing each other. In other words, where our bedroom was, their bedroom was. Where our kitchen was, this is the way it was built.
So you did a lot of running back and forth?
Oh, most of the time. We did not know the difference between my home and then my aunt's home. It was about the same thing.
How would you describe your father's status in the town of Bakowsk and his relationship with the non-Jews as well as the Jews?
Well, my father was very well respected because he probably was, whatever you want to call it, the richest Jew in this town. And you asked me about the relationship with the non-Jews. Well, 90% they came to shop to us from the villages and from the town, and of course they had to ask for credit, and my father gave them credit. When they paid up, he used to extend them again. When they didn't pay up, they came and they cried, my father did it anyhow. Then finally they had to bring some kind of a collateral. And that's the way how business went. I know one thing, that my father went with 80% of our assets that he possessed was on the books, which were not paid, of course.
I'd like now to turn to the period, 1939, prior to the German invasion. How old were you then?
About 9.5, yeah.
And you were still in school?
No more. Once the invasions came, there was no more school for Jews. But a cheder we had yet.
Prior to the invasion, do you remember hearing any rumors about a possible invasion from Germany?
Oh, definitely. We know that the war broke out. There was a war. It started September 1st, 1939.
And had you heard before September 1st, 1939? Was there any talk or any rumors, or did it come as a
Well,
surprise?
my father was the only one probably that he read a newspaper in our town, which was in German. And my father was very much involved in politics. So we knew that first they took Poland, and first they took away was Sudetengebiet, was part of Czechoslovakia.
The Sudetenland.
Sudetenland, yeah. And then, of course, Poland. They took part of Poland also into the Third Reich, which was called Schlesien, Oberschlesien, which is the city of Katowice, and so forth, on the border.
The Germans invaded Poland on September 1st.
Right.
About how soon after that did the Germans come to your area?
Well, we were 3 days sort of like policeless. We did not have, because the Poles did not act. They were afraid, and we were without police. So of course, the Ukrainians, we had like 16 villages around surrounding us. They came in and they robbed and destroyed all the Jewish stores. And that was during the time when we were policeless. Even the Polish police wouldn't help us.
And who was it who came in?
Ukrainians. Because all the villages surrounding Bukovsk, they were Ukrainians. And they knew, they used to, a lot of them used to shop by us, you know. So they came and they broke the windows and they robbed everything out of the stores, looted and so forth and so on. And then about 3 days later, we were occupied by the Slovakians from Slovakia, the soldiers. They were very nice. They came, they were with us for a very, very short while, and they retreated back to Slovakia because they thought Slovakia thought maybe we will be annexed to Slovakia. But we didn't, and they left, and then the Germans came in.
And about when was that?
That was probably like September 15th, maybe 14th, something like that.
And what are your memories of the German arrival?
It's very difficult to describe what fear we had when I was as a little boy, and I've seen those trucks, the machines, coming into the center of our town. They were lining up. This was not the SS or Gestapo, just the Wehrmacht. And those big trucks, I barely saw a truck in my life because our transportation was horse and buggy by us. So I've seen those big trucks, and they were sort of like lined up. And the first thing what they did is they went to the synagogues, which we had 3 synagogues. And one was called the Klois. Klois is sort of like, it's a synagogue, a bet midrash, or whatever you want to call it. And then we had 2 Butei Midrashim, 2 larger synagogues. They came, the first thing what they did, they took all the Torahs, all the Hebrew books, like the Gemarot and Hamashim, the Hillels and so forth, and they made like a bonfire. They destroyed everything. That was the first thing.
And what happened after that?
After that, they left, those Germans, and of course they gave the Polish police back the status to police us, but they did not get any guns. They weren't trusted. They were just went with the how do you call it, with the
blackjack or truncheon?
Something like that. And later on, and the Ukrainians had police. They were called the Zechovnik, And they were collaborating, of course, with the Nazis. And till about, that was from September till about the beginning of 1940, they took away my father's business, whatever was left. And they put in a Gentile there, a Ukraine, and he took over the store, and we were just pushed out. And I, as a child, I looked at it, I said, yeah, I used to come into the store, I used to come from school, play. I couldn't get into the store no more because it was under their domain. They did it to all the Jewish businesses in our town. They put in a Ukraine, and he took over. If the Ukraine was nice, sometimes he helped you out a little bit, and if not, he just chased you out.
Were you and your family allowed to continue living in the building?
Yes. We were living on the first floor, yes.
What other restrictions were taken against Jews in your town?
Of course, then they came out with the armband, you know, the white. By us, we didn't have stars. We were wearing the Star of David. We were wearing a white band with the Star of David. But I didn't have to wear it because I was a minor. The age of 12, if I can remember correctly. You're supposed to wear an armband.
Did you have a curfew?
Curfew, I don't remember.
How did your family survive at this time with the business lost?
Well, there was some Gentiles that my father did them big favors. He used to give them the grain, like I mentioned before. So my father took me, I remember we went into the little villages. They gave us some grain. Some of them gave us some potatoes. And that's how we lived.
Were there any actions to remove people for forced labor from your town?
Yes. The forced labor started right in 1940. A firm by the name of Kirchhoff, Firma Kirchhoff. It was a German firm. Then we also had another firm. It's called Otto, O-T-T-O, Heil. And they were builders, road builders. So they start to take away the youth for labor work. They used to pick them up in the morning and bring them back at night.
Were any people in your family affected?
My two brothers, one was about 14 and one was about 15 and a half. They went every morning to work. And the supervisor was sort of like, the supervisor was, it's called a Volksdeutsch, which means he was a Pole, but his descent, he was born in Germany. So they were sort of, they had the upper hand on everything.
Were your brothers given any pay or any food or anything for?
They only, well, first of all, they served treif, which was non-kosher food, so they couldn't eat. But at night when they came home, you know, my mother managed yet to make some food.
What else do you remember about that period and the treatment?
Well, one particular day, my brother, one of my brothers, I don't remember if it was Bernie or it was Leo, and they couldn't go to work because they were sick. So my father told me, why don't you take his place? Because they were counting. If let's presume from our town, they shipped 80 or 90 youngsters to work. If one will be missing, you know, so there were questions that will arise and so forth. So my father said, you smuggle yourself through, go ahead. And I went to work for him. And I came on the road. It was a very warm day, hot. The sun was unbelievable, so warm. And I was hot, and I was holding one of these axes, you know, to dig into the earth. And I was perspiring, so I took off my shirt. And the sun hit me, and I got a sunburn. I don't know whether it was second degree or third degree sunburn. And I came home. This I remembered And then my brother went back to work. He went to work.
Did they conscript just Jewish boys, or did they take
Just
Polish?
Jewish, just Jewish.
During this period, did you or your family hear any rumors about what was going on elsewhere in Poland?
There were rumors, but nobody wanted to believe. Let's put it this way. But the only one who really was believed those rumors was my father. May he rest in peace.
Were you able to continue with your religious life during this occupation?
It was on the secret already. As soon as they burned down the synagogues, you were not allowed. You were not allowed. So the services were conducted in private homes, like for Rosh Hashanah, Shabbat, and so.
What about obtaining properly slaughtered meat?
Slaughtered meat, everything was on the QT. It was not allowed.
Did there come a time in your town when Germans took over direct control?
Yes, they used to come in from sunup, just like as for a sport. They came in and they said to the Judenrat. The Judenrat was, they were appointed from the town, with the help probably also of the Polish people. They were in charge. And they said, give us 10 Jews. So the Judenrat, they didn't want to give out Jews. So they went themselves and they played a little sport. They killed 10 Jews. This was probably 1940. Mother and daughter, and father and son, and so forth and so on. Matter of fact, we had a tenant in our back. This I never forget. To me, probably those days I didn't know what Hollywood was, but to me he was the most handsomest man I have seen. His name was Schwerd. One of his brothers survived and he lived in Tel Aviv. I think he died about 2 years ago. Sholem was his name. And he was married and he had a little child. And they shot him. He was dead. And the little child asked, when we went in over there to pay the shiva call to have the minyan for services. And the little boy asked, where is my father? Wie is mein Tata in the Yiddish language? What answer could you give? I don't think he was more than 3 years old. But he was very, attached to his father. He was the only child.
How long did you live in Bakovsk under these conditions?
Till 42. Till about September 42. It's close about 3 years.
And what changed at that point?
What changed, of course, the laws, more restrictions, and so forth and so on.
Thank you. We'll pause here to change the tapes.
Okay.
Mr. Abraham Schwerd, at the end of the last tape, we were talking about the years between September 1939 and September 1942. As you think back in that period of the early occupation, is there anything else that you recall that you'd like to tell us about what happened?
Well, of course, typhoid spread. And typhoid those days, 90 out of 100 of people died because there was no medication, So I remember vividly my mother, and typhoid is a sickness that people sweat. The temperature go up to 105, 100, whatever. They beat the thermometer, let's put it this way. And